Hello, we're back. Penny here with Empress today. And, I figured I would do a little story time because I don't have that many stories about my watches, I don't think, but I have a few that kind of come to mind and stand out. So I figured today I would tell a story about this Invicta and about Invicta in general. And I think if I could title this, it would be something like, did Invicta ruin my dating life? Like that would be the title. Or like Invicta and dating. And so this particular Invicta is huge. That's the first thing that stands out. It's super thick. For reference, here's the IWC, which is already kind of a big watch. And you can see that, bam, this Invicta takes the cake. I've had this Invicta I didn't have it in my state of the collection because I don't wear it anymore, but I've had it for a good 12 years. I was trying to do the math, and I think I've had it for a solid 12 years. You can see bracelets all scratched up, and it does still work. And there is a recent battery in here. So chronograph function. There you go, it works. I didn't know anything about watches when I got this watch, again, 12 years ago. But I always had a watch in my life, at least one, and this was one of them. You can hear it's a very rattly type of bracelet. I'm going to put it on. So my story time begins. Young Penny, again, it was about 12 years ago. So younger Penny, and here it is on my wrist. Whoa. And I had this watch, and I guess as a background, what I'll say about young Penny 12 years ago is that I was just coming into my own in terms of style. Like I realized that, listen, most of my life I had worn kind of androgynous women's clothing or women's clothing right out full on. When I met you the first time, was I wearing women's clothing?
You had some pieces.
I had some pieces. Okay, so yeah, I always kind of hated wearing dresses and skirts and things. I was never a girly girl. I was always a tomboy, always had more guy friends than, girlfriends, platonic girlfriends. And, I was never a girly girl. So in my early 30s, I finally realized and accepted that my style was a certain way. And I was starting to become super comfortable just going all out and saying, look, I like slacks and a button-up shirt or jeans and a blazer, and really just sort of switching over and saying, look, I'm going to wear men's clothing tailored to me, but I'm not going to force the women's fashion and styles. Like women's slacks are kind of weirdly cut in terms of bell bottom. They just didn't look good on me. Let me just put it that way. I started to realize that in my 30s that I needed to embrace, who I was and my style. And I got this watch around that time when I was making that shift to just wearing whatever the heck I wanted to wear and being comfortable in my own skin, which is no small feat, right? Like I'm envious of those kids today who figure their life out in terms of just accepting their body and, their clothing choices or whatever really early in the game.
Or deciding early in the game that changes need to be made, I would say.
Okay, yeah. They figured themselves out a lot earlier than I did. I was never super self-hating or anything, but I certainly wasn't comfortable dressing a certain way. And by the time I'm in my 30s, I just said, look, I want to wear this. I want to wear this kind of shirt, these kind of pants, these kind of shoes, etc. So the Invicta came into my wardrobe around that time. It was the first time I had a watch that was on a bracelet, because all my life I'd always had watches on leather straps, like Fossils and stuff, and Kenneth Cole, and I don't know, department store stuff. But it was always on a leather strap, and then the batteries would die, I would toss them out. This time, I ordered this on Amazon. I don't know why I chose Invicta. I maybe just thought it looked cool. But once I had it and I put it on, I was like, whoa, it fit. It's obviously kind of a masculine piece with my style going in that direction. And again, young Penny I was feeling it. I was like, yeah. So the story is, that was me wearing this watch at that time, kind of at the height of I was also single at the time, kind of, pretty much. And I You have something to say?
We're just gonna be happy that I have no video over here.
Oh, you have no video of
There's
Empress's.
no video of my face.
Right, no video of Empress's face, because I just want to tell this story and see your reaction. You might already know this story.
I might already
Do you know
know
what I'm gonna say? Okay,
Yeah,
so
maybe.
so fast forward to I'm wearing this. I'm looking all dapper and decked out and however I wanted to dress. I don't remember what I was wearing that night, but I was wearing something that made me feel comfortable. So I don't know, something kind of sporty, maybe dapper. And I know for sure I was wearing this watch because that's a part of the memory. So I'm at this singles mixer. And it's like it wasn't speed dating, but you're at these tables. You were supposed to go from table to table and have like appetizers or I don't know, something and move around, right? So I go to this table and I had been looking at this young lady, you know, from the minute I got in there. and I was like, oh, right, I'm sitting at her table. I was sitting right next to her and I'm wearing my watch on my left, hand. And she's on my left. So she's to the left of me. So she's right at the watch arm. And so I'm at the table. It turns out, she was there. This young lady was there with a bunch of her friends. So they were all at the table. They all knew each other. I was the only person at the table who didn't know anybody. So that's sort of the backdrop for this. Wearing my Invicta, looking sharp at this table. So we're just making small talk, having a good time. I felt confident because of my fashion at that moment and because I had accepted, this is just how I am. And I'm chatting it up and stuff. And just to put a little context, back in the day, young Penny was not a scrub in terms of having success in dating. Would you say? I mean,
You were not.
I wouldn't say I was a player. People have said that about me at that time.
Penny was a player.
I wasn't a player. And the thing is I always used to say I didn't have any game. People would say to me, oh, you have so much game. I felt like my game was no game. Was the fact that I'm just a nerd and a dork and, pretty outgoing. But I didn't feel like it was ever any game. So whatever I had going for me was in full effect, the point is, at this dinner mixer thing. So here's the turning point in the evening, kind of. Like, it's the thing that stands out in my mind. I'm wearing my Invicta, and I'm going to put it on again so you can see, the reference point. And I was a lot smaller at that time in my life. I don't know, good 20, 30 pounds. So I was a lot smaller. This was on my wrist, so it's probably more exaggerated. It is fairly big as it is. But this young lady was to my left. And I'm talking and chatting it up and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to get a phone number. I already had some success in the room, but this was the young lady that I wanted to connect with. So I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to get a phone number. Let's see what happens. The way I knew it wasn't going anywhere was because she looks down at my wrist at some point in the conversation and says, oh my God, that's a big watch. That's what she said. And I looked at her. Well, I looked down at my wrist and I was like, yeah, it is. Yeah, my watch is a big watch. Like, I was proud. She was clearly disgusted for whatever reason, looking at this harmless watch, big, yes. But she was clearly disgusted, whatever this symbolized to her. And I was super proud and was like, heck yeah, I'm wearing this watch is big. I was sort of clueless of the implications of that at that moment. And her nose was all turned up and she just was, the vibe was so clear. Like, no, you're not going anywhere. I did not get a phone number. And in fact, whenever I saw her after that, she wasn't even friendly. So there was no chemistry, no connection, no love connection. And the Invicta, she called it out as my God, that's a big watch, and here I was, again, I feel like I had no game because I was totally clueless, but I should have known that meant she was not interested. Now, can I ask you this, Empress, if you were interested in someone but turned off by their watch or didn't like their watch, especially since you like watches now, could a watch ruin it for you? Would you have said that?
No.
Can you account for this lady?
No, but I can't account for a lot of quote unquote women out there. I can listen. A watch size does not mean anything. You could assume that it means something. But if I had seen you with that piece at that time, I probably would have said, "Oh, interesting piece. Let's talk about it."
Well, I knew you then, and I'm fairly
didn't-
sure. I mean, we had our
disconnected.
history a little bit, but I am fairly sure that I wore this watch at some point when you and I were connecting during that time, and you never. It's super rattly right now. You never like looked down in disgust at my watch, like
No.
But that was a clear indication that hey, if somebody looks down at your wrist and is like,
But that was a clear
annoyed or
indication
disgusted with your
of
watch,
maturity, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I just think possibly this person was very immature at the time, and knowing what you were going for at the time, yeah, they probably were.
Okay, that's a dig. All right. She was younger. I was early.
I said.
I was 30 in my 30s. I was early 30s, and she
Like
was
I said.
definitely in her 20s. So,
Like I said.
but you know, and she was like definitely a pretty girl. Like she knew that and worked that like pretty aesthetic thing. So I'm not gonna say anything bad. I wish her well. Hopefully she has found love and success in her life. But at the time,
But
she was
pretty
truly
doesn't-
disgusted.
You see, I wouldn't
with
say
my
pretty.
Invicta.
I would say she might have been shallow.
You know, oh man, you throwing daggers. You didn't even know who she was. You don't even know who I'm talking about.
It's called, you don't look at a watch and say, and what about this watch makes you say that?
I know.
Unless-
Isn't an
unless,
Invicta a turnoff? Oh my gosh, isn't an Invicta like
if you were used to Rolexes and APs, okay, someone wearing an Invicta probably won't pull you. But the size of the watch, I'm sorry, the size of the watch should not turn you off about a conversation with someone.
Well, it was clearly the size of the watch and not the brand. I don't think she was into watches at all or knew anything about Invicta. And at the time, I don't even know that Invicta had a bad reputation. I think in the watch collecting community, it has a very mixed to negative, reputation, but that's just because of its quality in some cases. However, some Invictas are deep, like the pro divers and stuff. I think people really have fun with and enjoy. This is not the greatest quality one. And what stands out to me now, looking back on it, 12 years later, is it's a Daytona replica. This is what a Daytona. It doesn't, Daytonas don't have this dive bezel. They have a tachometer bezel, and this dive bezel does rotate. So it's got some confused things going on there, but it has a date. Oh, and white, it clearly is supposed to be in that style of a Daytona. Right. It even has polished center links. So I think that's what they were going for. That's kind of what bugs me about it now is I didn't even know this was supposed to be a Daytona. At the time, it wasn't on my radar. Now that I actually want a Daytona, it's kind of funny to have it because maybe someday I will get a Daytona. Will I? Put it out there in the universe.
You will get a Daytona.
I will get a Daytona someday, and I'll have this right next to it. That like, dude, my journey in fashion and like self-acceptance and stuff, revolved around this piece in some way. And I'm not ashamed of it. I don't wear it. The last time I tried to wear this was probably like 2 or 3 summers ago, and the end links, if you tap them or if you move in a certain way, they just sound so cheap. So that bugged me. And it is big. It's super thick. Again, probably one of my biggest watches is the La Petite Prince, and it's way, way thinner and lighter than that. So this dwarfs that. But yeah, guys, that's how I knew that wasn't going anywhere. It's one of the few times, someone has ever called out what I was wearing or looked at my watch in any significant way. A few other times, but like that's one memory that stood out because she was just not having it. And I think you're right. She was maybe a little immature. It's just a rude thing to say, too, to someone. Like, you don't want to put them down or something because of what they're wearing.
Especially
if they're obviously feeling themselves, because I know I was. I was feeling good. I was smelling good. I was dressed nicely. I was having a good night. And that little interaction certainly did not ruin my night. But I was clearly like, hey, I'm not going anywhere at this table. Let's kind of get this appetizer and move on to the next table because she and her friends too, they were not having it. So that's Invicta story number 1. Quick Invicta story number 2. You may remember this. We were on vacation visiting my family, And my young cousin, I'll just call him Aaron because you never know, he wants to be named or anything on his much older cousin's channel. But my young cousin, we'll call him Aaron. He had an Invicta. We were visiting, and he's about 19 at the time. I think he was 19. He's a little bit older now, so he's maybe early 20s, and we were wearing Rolexes, I'm pretty sure, because on that trip, I just distinctively remember what watches we took. I was wearing the Polar Explorer. You were wearing your OP39. And I, being a watch fanatic, I saw this young kid come into the room. He's wearing an Invicta, and it was also a chronograph, but it was like a two-tone bluesy style one. So it was blue and it had bright yellow gold plated, accents. And, again, it was super big. So, and he's a skinny kid. So it stood out on his wrist. And I said to him, hey, nice watch. I like your watch, and something like that. And we just start chatting with him about the watch. Yep. And it turns out he got that watch as a gift from his sister's boyfriend because he helped him move. So it was sort of like a thank you gift for this young guy. And he was so proud of his Invicta. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were chatting with him about it, and he did not know what the pushers did. Like I said, hey, do you know this is a chronograph and it keeps time? So it was kind of a nice interaction to be able to talk to him about the pushers and keeping time with the subdials. I told him, hey, from experience, if you're going to get the battery changed, you actually have a couple batteries in there to get all of the functions working. You can't just change one battery. So we chatted about this watch, and then he saw that we had watches on, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a Rolex, and it was, getting the Polar Explorer. And you know what? I think when people see a Rolex in the wild, it's a little bit underwhelming compared, again, to like a blingy, really stand out type of Invicta. My little Polar Explorer probably didn't even faze him. He wasn't like, oh, wow, Rolex, I showed it to him, but I don't remember him being like impressed by it. He wasn't impressed. No, he wasn't. Because actual Rolexes, unlike, maybe this replica, are pretty understated. So like to a young kid, I'm sure any day of the week, he would choose his Invicta over my Polar Explorer because the Invicta was so much more dazzling. And it has significance to him because he got it as a gift. So, of course, during that conversation, I didn't say, oh my gosh, an Invicta, or what? Why is your watch too big? Oh, no. I think that with that kind of interaction, you just want to encourage them because at least at that age group, like the kid is wearing a watch in the first place. Right. And, it was now the next time I do go home, hopefully after the pandemic is better under control, I will see him again, and we might give him a watch that we don't wear as much anymore. I was thinking that Seiko Recraft that I have, it's also a big watch, and it's a nice blue with subdials and everything, blue watch with the chronograph feature. But it's probably a step up in terms of quality, than what he had. But it would just be to sort of advance his experiences and have something else. And you never know, he might become a watch enthusiast. So I think the moral of my story time is that Invicta can have a special place. It can I have nothing against the brand per se. I personally would not buy an Invicta in this day and age. I don't think. I'm not a huge diver fan as it is. And I think their best watches might be their divers. And so, yeah, that wouldn't be for me. But you will see them in the wild quite a bit, actually, especially in the young crowd. And you might just not get someone's phone number if you're wearing one. And not because of the reasons that you think that like, oh, they're turned off by the brand. Maybe they're a little materialistic and they're like, oh, I wish you had an AP or a Rolex on. No, they just might be offended that you should dare wear such a big watch. So that's my moral of my story. Well, and don't put people down because of their watches.
They may be like an iPhoner, and so then they only they don't notice what a real watch does.
Right.
And so,
Well, and I will say that, I don't even think I think people wore watches more then than now, for sure. Like, there's more watch enthusiasts now. But I think we went a long time in our culture where people really just didn't wear watches at all. Now people were wearing Apple Watches. Mm-hmm. But I think that at that time, it was probably more common even to wear a watch than it is now, other than an Apple Watch. Even though there's this rabid community of enthusiasts, the rest of the world just says, hey, mostly not going to even notice what you're wearing.
Right.
All right. That's a story time.
Okay.
So you wouldn't have said that. You obviously didn't say that, because I'm pretty sure I wore this watch.
No, I wouldn't have said that.
Okay, so
that's obnoxious.
If you did find it offensive, you wouldn't have said anything, especially if you liked the person.
I wouldn't have said anything even if I didn't like the person.
Right.
That's just shallow, weird thing to say.
It was weird, but it stood out. So now I have that funny story about, to me it's funny, because like whatever, like she was a match for me. So now I have that funny story about a watch that is 12 years old. Hey, it coincided with my like discovery of my own style. And I remember someone else just was like, ugh. And I was so proud. I was like, yeah, I'm wearing a big watch. Anyway, that's my story time. Take care.